Hello and welcome to Media 7. I'm Russell Brown. A review of the New Zealand Film Commission was on the to-do list of Arts Minister Chris Finlayson when he took office in 2008. Last year he appointed Sir Peter Jackson and Australian academic David Court to carry out that review. It didn't happen overnight. In fact, it took more than 12 months to deliver. But the review is in. What does it say and what happens next? As Jose Barbosa found, the answers weren't all that clear from the media coverage.
While the review is seen by many as an opportunity to shake up the Film Commission, TV News saw it as an opportunity to ladle on clichés.
And it's a Raspberry Award.
A really bad review of the Film Commission.
At 87 pages, the review was never going to be easy to summarise, so One News didn't. Instead, they asked some industry types what they thought, including the Commission's Chief Executive Graham Mason, who, perhaps understandably, appealed to a higher power.
Lord, is this justifiable?
And when the time came to actually talk about what was in the blimmin' thing, the facts were squirted out in 20 seconds.
Other recommendations are a little bit more complicated, like bringing short film funding back into the Commission away from other government agencies, and the government is still considering that.
The diplomacy, Alan, thank you.
Take 3.
3 News did manage to make the review's recommendations the story.
One of the criticisms is the Commission's reputation as unapproachable for young filmmakers.
But also wove a tapestry of the obvious.
You can't just sort of turn up on the doorstep and go, "Hi, I want to make films."
And it was rounded off with Chris Finlayson on breakfast in an interview useful only for having a bit of out-of-context fun.
And I said he'd given it to me orally, so why not do it? And so he was pleased to do it, and I was delighted to have him.
OK, but what do Jackson and Court want to see happen? To start with, the review highlights what it calls an us versus them attitude at the Commission. To end that, it suggests moving funding decisions away from the board, giving that power to Commission staff and making them accountable. It wants the Commission to start funding writers and directors, and says the requirement that producers be attached to development applications should be removed. The Commission should also relax the commercial imperative in the development process. It's argued that a focus on commercial projects has been counterproductive. It's also argued that the Commission has been stretched too wide, and it needs to have fewer scripts and projects in development.
It's okay.
What's been advocated here is a talent is king situation, where the careers of new filmmakers are developed with a long-term goal of keeping them working in New Zealand. Ultimately, the review sees the Commission as a good thing and argues that government funding is still vital. But if enacted, will its recommendations result in a stronger industry, where good ideas blossom into good films? Or should we just let the market sort out those fruity long hairs?
You have to be very, very careful letting the crazy arty types loose with taxpayer money. Very, very careful.
Jose Barbosa there. With me now are 3 men who each have a stake in the future of the Film Commission. Associate producer of Boy, which this year broke the box office record for a New Zealand film, Richard Fletcher. Next to him, Ant Timpson, creator of the 48 Hours Film Contest and a partner in Headstrong Films, which delivered 2 feature films under the Commission's low-budget feature scheme. And live from Avalon, Story director Vincent Ward, who has criticised the review's conclusions this week. Welcome to you all. Richard, you were at a meeting this week of SPADA members. What was the gist of that?
It was an internal SPADA meeting amongst a few members of the SPADA exec, and then next week we'll talk to the wider membership. And we wanted to sort of distill our views and get a sense of where we stood on the review and what we thought were the positives and where we thought there were issues. I think, first off, there are a lot of positives within the report, but the biggest issue I think of all of the review is what is going to happen with it and how is it going to be implemented.
There's a very strong steer in the review that funding should not be attached to producers, it should be attached to talent. I imagine that you would have some quibbles with that.
I think you can read it 2 ways. If you're being generous, you'd say that producer is included within that talent, and absolutely a producer should be included within that talent, because getting a film through the development process into production, made and released, is a collaborative process, and that's acknowledged in the report. And the producer is absolutely integral to that. If you were slightly more hard-nosed, I think, the report is slightly concerning in the sense of its definition of the role of producer and its understanding of the role of the producer in the independent
It basically
sector.
depicts you as the hired help, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's certain references there about producers just rising through the ranks and producers being the master of logistics and budget, where a producer is ideally a lot more than that.
And I suppose you can make a case for either view, can't you? Because you can point to both successes and failures of producer-driven or writer-driven projects.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, Whale Rider would not have happened without John Barnett. It was a long gestation, mostly privately financed. On the flip side, you can say, Vintner's Luck was a director-driven project. It didn't work. It was the same director in both. Equally, World's Fastest Indian, it was Roger's project. It was driven by him. It was an enormous success. But I think, possibly the best example is Boy. It was very much a collaboration between Ainsley, Taika and Cliff. It was a collaboration between writer, director and producer. And
Timpson, you were very quick out of the gate with an open letter to both the CEO of the Film Commission and the Minister. What was the gist of that letter?
The letter was basically highlighting the fact that the review in certain parts named the 48-hour competition as a way for looking towards new talent and that it acts as a talent incubator. And the fact that it was the only entity that was mentioned in the review by name, which was really encouraging. So I thought, let's take advantage of this. We don't really get any major funding. And if it's the only, seen through, Graham Mason said it himself, the Minister said it himself, Peter Jackson's has said it. And everyone in the film industry agrees that it's a great event, so why can't this be supported? Mainly because the existing guidelines in terms of funding are quite restricted. They can't be flexible. They can't say, let's just give this guy some money because someone over here is going to say, what are you doing? You can't give him money.
That's a keynote to the review, isn't it? That word flexibility does turn up there quite a lot. I wonder how easy it is to do.
It's really hard. I think the minute you do it, it's Pandora's box. And I just think, I'm a big fan of the chaos theory. I think the 48 is an example of that let people go and do what they do. You give them some rough guidelines and sometimes you come back with gems. So I just think in terms of in funding, I just think it's nuts that they don't have the ability to say, OK, this is a great initiative, let's suddenly redirect some funding towards here and not have to wait for 3 or 4 years before the mandate changes.
And yet I have to say, Ant, that you admitted yourself in an online discussion earlier this year that you haven't seen perhaps the explosion of lo-fi talent coming out of 48 Hours for all its profile.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, there are independent films, digital films being made, and they haven't really had enormous box office clout because they haven't really been supported by the Film Commission. If they maybe had a couple of $1 million behind them, the support of of the marketing sales team there, maybe people would know about them. But at this stage, there's only one direct route, which is the short film route, and you nurture a talent, which is a very good, successful. It's been successful, but what I'm saying is that it shouldn't just be the only one, and I think that's what the review said as well, that they've got to open up to different methods of finding that talent and supporting it.
Now, Vincent Ward, one of your criticisms this week is that there is too much emphasis in the review on nurturing talent and not enough on mature talent. Would that be fair?
I think that's fair to say, yeah. I mean, I think our problem, our biggest challenge is that there really isn't enough in the way of resources devoted to the Film Commission, that they're spread too thin and they're trying to do too much. And that means they aren't able to achieve anywhere near as much as really we would like them to.
Did you really say you were going to leave the country if the recommendations were enacted?
I said I'm thinking of leaving the country and looking for projects elsewhere because of the difficulties of making films here. And I also work some of the time in Australia anyway.
But people looking in on this might say that you've had your turn with the Film Commission. You've had quite a lot of assistance in the past. You're now a mature director. You should be able to go and finance your own films.
That's the belief. It doesn't actually work like that. There's a sort of misunderstanding about international financing and particularly financing out of the US. The US, by and large, never finances New Zealand films. Why would the English put money into a New Zealand film? So if you want New Zealand content films by experienced directors, really we need to put money in that direction. I guess the point I would make is why put the resources into training someone, allowing them and selecting them from hundreds of filmmakers and seeing their career develop just to let it wash away onto the shore.
Richard, this is an interesting point. The more I look at this industry, I wonder who does finance films and why they do it. Apart from the Film Commission, who does actually finance New Zealand films?
I mean, it's an interesting comment, picking up on Vincent. There is a glaring admission in the report. There's very little talk about finance external of the Film Commission. And the reality is, there's three basic steps. There's your fully funded New Zealand film, which is a mixture of Film Commission, ends it on there, and a bit of TV money. There's the extreme, which is the King Kongs, Avatar, which are a different league. And in the middle is that really, really difficult ground, which Vincent's talking, which was Vincent's film River Queen, which I worked on. And it's using that little bit of Film Commission money, and in some cases like Boy, it'll be the majority, in some cases like River Queen, it'll be the minority. And it's utilising wherever you can get money from. When Vincent and I did River Queen, there was quite a lot of relatively, and I say relatively, easy tax money out of the UK. That money no longer exists. And with the economic downturn, the pressure on independent film financing is even harder than it was before. And the only way in which you can attract finance at the moment is predominantly if you have a seriously named director and some named cast. Otherwise, they don't want to talk to you. So there's real pressure of where do you find that money from. And that's a real skill in finding that money. And I think it's definitely a gap in the review, in the sense it's all focused on talent, but actually how are these films going to get made? Well, you can nurture talent, but you can you can throw money at them to get a great script, but if that script can't get financed, what's the point of doing it?
And also I think Vincent's point's well made that possibly the problem is there's just not enough Film Commission money to go around. We'll take a break now, and when we come back, ask whether the system still has the ability to surprise.